This is the Art of Darkness podcast with Kevin Kautzman.
And Abbie Lucas.
We're a couple of very online writers interested in the dark side of creativity.
This show is about art and the people who make it, what it costs them, and what it takes to bring something unique and impactful into the world.
On each episode, we examine the life and work of an artist you might think you know.
Don't worry, they're all safely dead.
We aren't. Find us online at artofdarkpod.com, and please support the show through Patreon or Substack. Thank you. Hey, we're back with the first dark one of season 5 of Art of Darkness. 5 years that I've done this, right? Abbie is new. She's done a couple of episodes with us prior to this year. Right? Yeah, 5 years, 5 minutes. For those who are new to the show, Dark Rooms are where we have on awesome guests to talk about one of the subjects we've already covered. Today, we're going to be talking about the singular, incomparable artist of the 20th century, spanning styles and genres and types of music and types of media, David Bowie, with friend of the pod, Glen Rockney, who is out in California. I'm in Minnesota. Abbie's in London. That's actually very fitting because it models a very peripatetic life that we had in the great David Bowie. Glenn, of course, does the podcast Rare Candy. I'm a big fan. I've become a fan since I got to know you, Glenn, through the podcast party circuit. Before we get into Bowie, do you want to describe Rare Candy to people? What is your show?
Still have trouble doing that, but I'll do my best. It's kind of it's a men's hangout for sure. Though of course the ladies are welcome, of course.
You're always horsing. You're the horse boys.
Yeah. Yeah, the ladies are welcome, but you like the idea is that they come on to be one of the guys, you know. So it is like it is kind of this thing. But we horse around a little bit.
I see.
Yeah, it's very. People are like, "Oh no, I'll come on there," and you know, like, no, we kind of absorb you into like it's kind of this like amorphous blob that we absorb you into, and before you know, it's one of the guys. You're one of the guys. So, but anyways, we talk about anything health, science, literature, lots of films, and I just we tackle things from kind of a unique perspective. I would say it doesn't feel unique to us, but to me and Cy growing up, but we are admittedly kind of interesting, different kind of guys, I think. So
you're eclectic, and you've been covering Wallabeck recently, and Abbie actually introduced me to Wallabeck many years ago. The Possibility of an Island, ages ago. And this is not a Wallabeck episode. We can't cover him because he's not dead. He's probably going to outlive us all. He's just
firmly
pickling
alive.
himself with cigarettes and red wine. I mean, but we could talk about that for a little bit, Glenn. Yeah. So what have you been covering? Did you read Annihilation recently?
Yeah, and that's why I think you might be covering him pretty soon. If you read that book, like you're like, damn, that sounds. There's a lot of meetings with doctors happening all the time, and getting news that you don't love. And with Welbeck, you never know, but he's like writing, and he lost his like, and I say this in a good way. In Annihilation, he really. The nastiness isn't quite there, like the mean-spirited. He's a very, very tender, and you almost feel like, oh, is there something, did he get poor news, is what I was wondering.
So
I hope not.
Is Annihilation his Black Star, then?
Oh, geez.
I mean, to be fair, he survived its release. So, at this point, he was able to see the own book released. But, yeah, I feel like he'd be the type of guy to, like Norm Macdonald, to never tell anybody anything, And just, I feel like that's if we were to lose him. And I hope we get many more years of him. The book is phenomenal, by the way. If that is his last one, then it's a terrific one. I think it's much better than Serotonin. But I found it interesting because I've always heard about Welbeck from like and this isn't bad, but like the kind of like Dime Square adjacent, like New York. So you kind of feel like it's made for those people, but I kind of feel like it's a lot more for the everyman and woman kind of.
His book Submission was the #1 novel in France when it came out. I assume something is probably a tiny bit lost in translation to begin. Sure. But I think it's very cool that he went on Red Scare. What a crazy crossover. So that's a lot of fun.
He's great. He's great. I think he's one of I to me I've read Possibility of an Island was my introduction to him, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is
Banger.
one of the best things I've
Mm.
ever read. Where I just was, it was a tuning fork for me. It just immediately, I understood just all of it, and I said, okay, this isn't just like a book you like take a picture with like oysters and a pack of like cigarettes and be like, I'm reading well, but it's just so much more than that. So we have the Well Book Club, that's part of it's a drop down menu upon drop down menu. If you listen to Rare Candy, there's so many subsidiary shows within there, and we covered Possibility of an Island first, but now we're going in reverse order from Annihilation back to whatever, to cover all of them.
Super
And
cool.
I haven't read most of his stuff. I've only read 3 of his novels, but I am obsessed.
You're also on that show, Crichton Pilled. And we were talking about that on a back channel. We will get to Bowie, people. Okay, we will get there. I would like to think that David Bowie would appreciate some literary conversation. He hauled
Yeah.
around 400 books at one point, famously. Well, yeah. In any case, tell me, just give me your 90-second Michael Crichton quick hit, and then tell me where people can go and listen to Rare Candy.
Well, first I would say rarecandy.substack.com. That's where Gain of Fiction is at. That's where, of course we're on all regular, episode feeds. However, our fiction is behind a paywall, our fiction episodes. And we just recorded our 50th the other day. So you get your money's worth on the back catalog for sure. But Michael Crichton's the reason I started it. And I was going to cover all of his books, but it became something much more than that. That being said, that guy, he was the one guy I thought that got paid and rewarded well for his entertainment, but not for his foresight, which I thought was kind of interesting. He's kind of looked at as this amusement park kind of, oh, silly dinosaur guy. And you realized he actually pushed back on a lot, kind of similar to Welbeck, like pushed back on a lot of current things in his time that I think we're starting to see he was a little bit right on. And also just the fact that he's like 6'9" and probably
Harvard,
200 IQ.
yeah.
200 IQ. Like I said,
Yeah.
our electoral process is a little bit weird right now, but if we were a bit more primitive, we would just make him president because he's so big and smart. Like we would have just been like, that guy's 6'9", you can lead the country forever. We would have, and we might have been right.
We used to be a proper country. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just rewatched Jurassic Park, a few weeks ago. It still holds up.
So great.
It's
And that's a fun companion. Like
rollicking.
Spielberg took a very scientific, fun thriller book and made it for everybody, and that's like the best kind of mainstream adaptation that you can think of for like that novel, because it's something different, but it's just as good in my opinion.
I'm a complete freak for Jaws. It's probably my favorite movie. And so watching Jurassic Park, it's like, you see him fulfilling a lot of the things that he had in mind with
Yeah.
Jaws. Even with Jaws, there's those little nods to science and all of this. So it's just interesting to see. Well, let's get on to the great one. Let's get on to the Goblin King. Because Glenn's our guest, I'm going to ask him first, but I'm going to ask you too, Abby, because you were not there for our epic core episode that we did. But Glenn,
I was not.
nope, but you're here now. Glenn, what does David Bowie mean to you? Where where do you start with it?
Man, it's funny. I grew up always like a fan of like, if you were to go down as like iTunes essentials, I felt like I was like, oh, I knew the big songs. I knew all of this stuff, but really it's not as far back in my childhood that I became the maximalist of Bowie. Like it was really just a few years ago when I was just going through it. And I remember like, man, I gotta just listen to his entire catalog, which is intimidating because he just didn't stop ever making music. And but it's a lot of albums similar to Prince, which those two guys are my two favorite artists ever. And they with
The purple
Bowie,
one.
with
I got
Bowie,
my Vikings jersey on.
exactly. With Bowie, he was another one of those guys. Everybody knows who he is, but you maybe most people have listened to like 7% of his catalog. I feel like everyone knows who David Bowie is though, and he. I think he's the avant-garde Elvis, is what I think he is. He's just an amazing entertainer. Every risk he takes seems to work, which I've always been obsessed with. Like, I mean, yeah, obviously you could point to some that aren't like amazing, but for the most part, for his if I was stranded on an island and I wanted if I could pick one artist, you would get like 8 different genres if you picked Bowie. So you'd probably get the bang for your buck. So I've just become obsessed with that. I love his like 70s meltdowns, his cracked actor, like where he's paranoid in the back of the limousine drinking out of a quart of milk. All the lore, all the arcs, including the quote unquote problematic ones, all of that is so fun. And it just, to me, everybody, it's all downstream from him. So much of the stuff you see now.
I mean, yeah, we live in Bowie's world in many ways.
100%.
Abby, what does Bowie mean to you? Are you a maximalist, or which albums do you know?
I think I'm probably more one of the 7%ers. He's one of those artists that, like Elvis, he's somebody that I never remember first ever hearing. Like it's somebody that's always sort of I've always sort of been aware of, and I feel like Elvis is kind of the same. Like there was no point in my life that I don't remember not knowing who they were.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, obviously all the hits. I have listened to some of the albums in depth, but not all of them. But I'd say I'm more familiar with some of his auxiliary work, I guess, like Labyrinth. I was a big fan of. I love that movie. What
about the music videos, Abby? I mean, he was innovating.
The music videos are very interesting. We went and saw the musical that he had.
Oh yeah,
he had co-written or produced
with
just
the guy
before
from,
he died.
Yeah, but he was already dead
Dexter,
when we went to go see it. And with the guy from Dexter, and then somebody had like a heart attack or a stroke during the show. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that now.
What was that music? It was called Lazarus.
It's called Lazarus.
Right?
Yeah, it was called Lazarus. And a big fan of the Extras episode where he jumps on the piano and roasts Ricky Gervais.
So good. God, I love that show. I love Extras.
Yeah, little fat man with the pug-nosed face.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, just savage. And pretty fun. Lazarus, it's like sort of the swan song from Black Star. Okay, well, let's just talk about Black Star. I was living in New York when that came out. And then when you realized what it was, that he was like giving his own artistic swan song and eulogy, and just then quietly passed away. I mean, I think that is such an incredible accomplishment to be on death's door and to produce it's probably one of his top 5, top 7 of his albums.
It's tough. Yeah.
He's got a huge catalog, but it's definitely, I have it on vinyl. It's worth slapping on. And I didn't just buy it because he died. Like I'm sure a lot of people did, and it went to #1 and blah, blah, blah. But if you've not exposed yourself to that record from beginning to end, you've got to do it. Particularly the music videos. Like the music videos are like wild.
The music video for Lazarus is quite upsetting when you watch it after he's dead. I mean, he looks so ill, and it's.
I know.
I mean,
I don't particularly like watching it, to be honest. Like, it's not bad.
Oh yeah, I don't need to. Yeah. It's like Irreversible. I don't need to slap that on again, or Nymphomaniac. I don't need to slap those movies on again. I can go without that. But
I never need to see Irreversible again in my life.
Great film. Burn the copy. Yeah,
for sure. Glenn, so I'm going to ask, like, probably it's a hacky question, but I ask this to people because his catalog is so in depth. If you have to pick like a 3-album run or like 3 records, where do you go?
So for me, I guess I would, man, I wish I could skip over Lodger. Not that I don't like that album, but if
we're on the same page.
Yeah, I'm going to go Low Heroes and Scary Monsters. I mean, you just you would, if you could skip over Lodger. I know some state, I would imagine you have Station to Station, Low, and Heroes if I were to guess yours, Kevin, because
that's 100% it.
Play.
That's
Station to Station is a play. So like if you're a playwright, that album is.
I think I have it right here. Let me see.
But I'll tell you, I recently, whenever we drive down the coast in California, I always find myself putting on Aladdin Sane, like, and
Oh,
that's
it's
not
a
an album
banger.
that, as a kid, I thought it was like lame, like Liza Minnelli cabaret music. And I mean, it kind of is, but it's great. Like, it's like it's like his cabaret, like, like waltzing and sauntering down like a spiral staircase with a little cane, that's what it sounds like, but it's so good. And I love that, that one has really popped out to me because I've been covering Bowie. I've done like two massive episodes on him, and that Aladdin Sane was not really part of those episodes as it probably would be for me now. And that's the thing is, Bowie, it's like you could have asked me that question over the last 4 years, and I'd probably have four different answers. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like he's kind of this like that's why I like him so much is you can take any era of him and listen to him all the time. I don't go through like Bowie moods. I go through Bowie era moods,
Mm. Yeah, and for people who were trying to situate these records, Aladdin Sane was his follow-up to the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
How do you follow that record up? Well, you change everything. You
Yeah.
change completely. You become a new. He was really a theater artist all the way through,
Oh, yeah.
and one of the great theater artists of the 20th century. There's that incredible piano solo on that Aladdin Sane, and
And the Lady Grinning Soul, like that. I mean, that song is like you're talking about like four genres come, but you have like Spanish guitar and then like classical, like operatic piano. It's so cool.
he was so good at bringing out the team around him, like and identifying talent but then owning the project, like and keeping people on side. Like they
Yeah.
will say, if you read the oral history, which I don't know where my copy went. I think I lent it to a friend. Actually, I never lend books. If a book leaves my hand, I assume I've given
It's
it
gone.
to you.
It's gone.
It's gone.
That's it. It's like loaning money to family.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
for
Or
sure.
or
You're not getting
or,
it back.
or podcasters, or any random podcaster. Oh, you support the pod, support Rare Candy,
Yeah.
support the pod.
Yeah, but
We're,
don't loan me any.
Yeah, no, you're not low. Yeah, once you're in, you're in. I mean, but
This is one-sided. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Yeah. The thing about that reading the oral biography, which I remember, and it's really worth reading. It's masterful. It's just pastiche of his life through the words of the people in his orbit and who collaborated with him, and then periodically from him. And what the people would always say is that he was, I mean, it was like astronomical charisma. Like sexual charisma, like he'd just pick you up. He would just pick you up, and like this preternatural, like good looks, of course, which he was sort of aware of, and but they would say time and again, like he would steal your girl, but he would be an English gentleman about it, right? He would leave you feeling, maybe not quite like that, but in any event. So yeah, go listen to Aladdin Sane. I've got a bit from this Bowie biography I want to read just to sort of like contextualize the conversation. And because the show is about the dark side of creativity, he of course went through this really difficult period right around the move to Berlin, right? So,
Yep.
and this biography is Wendy Lee. Little pulpy biography, it's kind of salacious, which we like. All right. And I think this is a quote from him. As I was getting up to 40 and 50, which, okay, oh boy, I'm not gonna ask your age, Glenn, but I'm telling you what, man, 40s.
I'm 21.
You're
yeah.
Okay.
Nowhere near there.
You're
I'm happy
very
to share-
precocious.
I'm happy to
You're
share
very
my
precocious.
age, Kevin. I'm
Listen,
happy-
that California sun and the adrenochrome is keeping you young.
We have-
I want to.
We have Silicon Valley text Brian Johnson hacks out here, so
Right.
yeah. Mhm.
You keep them behind the paywall.
Exactly.
Is anybody? This is a bit of a tangent, but has anybody been affected? Who I mean, you must know some people who've been affected by these fires. I mean, that's
I
horrible.
am I've been around. I live in the north, so
Mhm. Yeah, I know
it's
that.
I'm not away. I'm away from, but we've always had our little shares of fires out here, so I know exactly kind of what it's like. But no, a lot of my friends down south, like I know a lot of people who had to evacuate. They're kind of unsure of what the situation is, but they were able to. Everybody I know at least was able to get out safely, which
Mm.
I mean, I hate to say, oh, that's all that counts, because no, there's more that counts, but that is the number one thing. It's horrifying. California, we have beautiful weather, beautiful scenery and stuff. However, our natural disasters, when they hit, can be like apocalyptic. Really, like the fires and earthquakes are really scary. I remember my dad when I was in 1989. It was well, I guess I just dated myself. The year before I was born, he said you could see the freeway overpasses like going like this from the earthquake
Oh my
in the
Oh my
80s.
gosh.
And
gosh.
he was like, and this is back before cell phones. So my mom's hoping my dad gets home on time and has no way of finding out. So,
Right.
he did make it home, but it's scary. I mean, it's really scary. I hate I hate it all. I hate seeing the imagery of it, though. It's
Mm.
everywhere and it's important to see. But yeah, ugh, scary.
Well, and bringing it back to Bowie, he met the devil in his pool in L.A. rather famously. He
Yeah.
freaked out in
That'll
L.A.
happen. That'll
Right.
happen.
Right. Yeah. I
Yeah.
believe it. It's always a bit of cope out here in Minnesota, but people will say like at least we don't have natural disasters. We
Yeah.
have the
Mm.
cold and people in pajamas at Target. That's what we have to deal
No,
with
we have those.
out here.
We have those. We have the pajama Target stuff now. Sadly, no
Yeah.
one's outlawed that yet.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, you
Tesco have outlawed it in London.
Oh,
Well, in
really?
the UK. Yeah.
What?
No pajamas at
amazing.
Tesco.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And so I got the funny thing about Bowie. I was just thinking about this the other day because yeah, it was L.A. that drove him insane. He was going down there to be like this soul
Mm.
artist, young Americans. When he had the little like red tuft of hair and his teeth were still terrible. It was so funny, like that era. And he would be wearing like these like kind of like aqua fresh like toothpaste colored suits and stuff. And he was just going insane at the time doing I always say the occult rituals, but that's just literally what you did when you were famous in the 70s. You just had to, if you weren't making a damn thing if you weren't doing occultism in your house. Like Jimmy Page, all these, Jimmy Page storing mason jars of piss in his refrigerator, like doing
The whole
alchemy.
kind of Kenneth Anger milieu.
And by the way,
Mhm.
why do you think we don't have rock anymore? Why do you think rock doesn't
Oh,
exist anymore?
Uh,
Yeah,
sure.
like you guys cut out a few processes, I think, or at least for doing them in a more you can't bypass certain things. But anyways, Bowie
Drugs and
melted
the
down.
occult.
Yeah,
Mm.
come on.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There might be something
exactly.
to that.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying you need to bring it back. I just mean if you want rock ever again, you might have to.
You might
And
have to summon the devil in your pool in LA if you
like
want to
control it,
rock again. Yeah,
kind of
right. Maybe
sequester
there's
it to
right. Sure.
like a
Maybe bring
Simpsons.
a priest along.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
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 there's
yeah.
some.
There's always a way
Yeah.
out. Don't worry, guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But but I do picture almost like him going to L.A. in like having like a Mulholland Drive style scenario of Bowie going to L.A.
Mm.
wide-eyed, but then having to kill like
Mm.
this other personality within him, like this, and just having it, and then emerging out of it looking like in a diner with like bags under your eyes and kind of like going insane. I kind of almost picture like a Mulholland Drive style movie happening in his LA experience, just it's so sinister, but still making great stuff all the time, everything looking incredible. You can't turn away from it. But then, yeah, going to Berlin, he comes out and starts looking like a guy from Berlin.
Mm. Right. Right. So I want to read this quote and then a little bit from this bio to get us into that period. And this is Bowie. As I was getting up to 40 and 50, going around the corners, I remember looking at the dash thinking, Jesus, aren't I going to crash soon? His car metaphor, right? He said, remembering James Dean and his tragic early death in a car crash, he said to himself, I'll put a twist on it. I'll just crash into a pillar in this underground car park in Berlin. Uh, and then, of course, he goes to live in Berlin, and he's listening to Kraftwerk, and he gets this burst of creativity. And Berlin ignited his gift of for turning the negative into a positive and milking his own life and experiences. Then what comes out next is Low. I think the A side of Low is probably the greatest side of rock and roll that's ever been
Pretty
made.
damn good.
It's up there. I mean, it's like certainly in the canon of great rock and roll, and it's still crazily avant-garde. You put on the A side of Low. I'm sure I've said this before in other venues. If somebody could make another A side of Low tomorrow, you'd go, this is contemporary rock and roll. Like, give us that again. And then to have the audacity to like flip the B side, and then it's all this like crazy, synthy mood music. It just the Stones to do that at that point in his career. That's my favorite. That's my favorite Bowie record.
And the trolling too, because you have to realize he's accused of all these. It's funny. Oh, he's accused of doing the Roman salute.
Yeah, the salute. Throwing a Roman
salute, doing all this stuff, smuggling paraphernalia. And all that. But then you hear a song like "Breaking Glass," where he's just trolling the whole time. Like at that time, I don't look at the carpet. I drew something awful on it. Like just.
I love that lyric. Don't look at the carpet. I drew something awful on it.
Breaking glass, the night of the broken glass. Like there's a lot of allusions. So I always love how he was like, and I'm deeply sorry that happened. Anyways, my next album is just me making fun of everybody that got mad about that, and then doing my fun Brian Eno stuff too.
Yeah. Well, here's what he said about Low. The first of Low was all about me, always crashing in the same car and all that self-pitying crap. Isn't it great to be on your own? Let's just pull down the blinds and fuck them all. I love it.
That's what happens when you don't eat anything but peppers and milk and cocaine.
Peppers and milk and cocaine. Yeah. Well, and so it was around this time that, if you recall from the core episode that we did, which you can go back and, of course, listen to at any time, that he had this assistant woman named Coco. And Coco became the wedge between him and Angie. And so I'm going to read a little bit. Angie, of course, is his first wife. And so their child was now primarily living with David in Berlin and going to school there. He had made friends with the other children and seemed to be happy. David did his best as a father, but was often inadequate in communicating with him. I love this. And on those occasions, according to an eyewitness, they would sit together in awkward silence. Imagine being a little toddler and there's your father, David Bowie. The tension escalated when Angie arrived in Berlin for a visit, and in the heat of the moment, she and David had sex for the first time in a long time. But if Angie believed that this heralded a reconciliation, she was wrong. And as always, Coco proved to be a stumbling block. Over and over, Angie demanded that David fire Coco, cut her out of his life, but he refused. And with a combination of naivete and an incredulity, insisted, Angie, how can you ask that? You know how much I rely on her. She's part of the organization. She knows everything about my business. Who else could run it the way she could? It's like he had a work wife. He had a work wife. And the real wife was like, no, this isn't going to work well. And I'm not speaking ill here of Angie, but the impression one gets of Angie is that Angie could never have been a Coco, if that makes sense. Different types of people. So Angie volunteered that she could take care of David's affairs, but he ignored her. When he discovered that Coco had fled the apartment where she had her own room, he became extremely concerned and searched Berlin for her, desperate. So before she left Berlin, Angie threw all of Coco's things out of the window and then left the apartment forever. And this was 8 years after they had gotten married, and that was sort of ahead of the divorce.
Can you imagine if you were throwing out a bunch of dresses as like a mad woman, then you realize you're like, these are David's dresses.
Yeah.
This is way too big for
Whose
Coco.
clothes are these?
This is a 6-foot man. Yeah.
I designed these.
After the all the milk and the red peppers, they might have been too small for Coco.
I know, because he was
Wasn't he like 80 pounds or something?
Because I don't think he was a very short guy. Like I think he was pretty tall, and I think he was cracked like almost under 100 pounds. It was crazy.
That is insane.
That's got to be funny, man. Yeah, because you got to be careful with the wardrobe. There's a lot of mixing of wardrobe happening there. I would.
Oh God. Well, and
didn't he send Duncan to Gordonston?
What Gordonston?
Gordonston? There's a boarding school he sent him to, and it's this
Mm,
boarding school in Britain. I can't remember
mm.
where. I think it might be Scotland. And it's where Prince Charles, Prince Philip all went to school. Like a bunch of
Oh
other
wow.
really famous people went there. And it is largely known for being an extremely abusive school.
Oh, yes, he did. We love, and this is a recurring theme on Art of Darkness. We love talking about boarding schools and how crazy the whole boarding school thing is, and how it's just sort of shrugged off. Like, of course,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
sending these children away on their own. What do you? It's like baked in. It's like the system
Mm.
wants
Yeah.
it. It's very strange. Yeah.
It just feels like just everything's like a big Charles Dickens thing that happens over there. Like you go to school and you just get like abused by teachers, and then they're just like, oh, off you go. And then,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know.
And
Okay,
now go out into the world.
now you're going to be an MP.
Yeah.
Down the way.
Yeah, 100%. That's the
Well,
trajectory.
Yeah, yeah.
let me, and if you've ever, and I'm, you don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but if you meet people who've gone to boarding schools, it's different. It's a
Mm.
different animal because those formative years are so crucial. And if you went to a Lord of the Flies public high school like I did, it's a totally different
Yeah.
experience from the boardings. But the boarding school has its own Lord of the Flies stuff. It's just happening in the dorms, and it
I
gets
am the
heavy.
only kid in my family that didn't go to a boarding school.
Yeah.
And
Look at you.
one
And
of
look at
us.
you.
Now you, yeah,
And look at me
Verified
now.
heir.
yeah. Now you're a co-host of an obscure niche internet podcast
Yeah.
about dead
Yeah,
artists.
I earn nowhere near as much money as my brother.
Yeah. Take that, MP Prince Charles
Right.
Academy. Take that.
Yeah.
I think boarding schools
Eaton.
in New Zealand are a little
Who
bit different.
needs Eaton? Mm.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
true. Yeah, that's
Well, let me read a little bit because you brought it up, Abby. I mean, sort of, I like filling in the gaps. So
Mhm.
you're talking about Duncan Zoe, right? He was born in 1971. He's still alive. He's 53 years old, and he's a director, a film director.
He's a filmmaker,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. And he spent time growing up, and this is just a Wikipedia, in London, Berlin, and Vevey in Switzerland. And he attended the Commonwealth American School in Lausanne. And then when his folks divorced in 1980, David got custody, and he would visit his mother on school holidays. And then you're right, Abby, at age 14, he enrolled in the Scottish coeducational boarding school Gordonston in Scotland. Fascinating. Founded in 1934 as
Hmm.
the British Salem School by German Jewish educator Kurt Hahn. Oh, wow. This is just a rabbit hole. Based on the model of Schule Schloss Salem that he had founded in Germany in 1919. What is that model? Let's read. This is fun. Uh, it's just whatever. It's a German schooling system. So, okay. All right. I can see if you're David Bowie and you have a teenage son and you're divorced, I could understand the appeal of a boarding school.
Yeah.
He's not going to tour with you, is he?
No.
You're, no.
Or,
Um,
be drawing things on the carpet in Berlin.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
whatever else.
Right.
Bowie might go. We can't have another one of me.
No.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I've become increasingly convinced, and Glenn, I want to throw this at you, and you too, Abby. But I've become convinced that there's no greater rock and roll song than "Heroes."
I agree.
It's it's flawless. It's perfect.
Particularly Heroes 1977 live at Earl's Court. Type it in on YouTube, guys. That's the best performance of that
Okay.
song, and he looks really cool. He looks really healthy. Like he's kind of bouncing back out of it. He's got kind of his the blonde hair, and he looks like he put on. I don't know. Now he looks like he's 120 pounds. And so, he's and a svelte 120 pounds. But yeah, that one particularly, it's great. It's one of the best what's weird is nobody says he's a bad singer, but you never will hear him being put in like these great vocalists but he has like the most unique voice. And when he actually decides to belts something, it kind of catches you by surprise how good it is. Whereas opposed, he's kind of going, when he's doing his like talking, and I love how his British accent comes through as a rock
Mm.
singer, which I've always respected for a lot of singers instead of trying to sound like, an American singer a lot of times, or his accent comes through. But when he really hits like notes in his upper register and does that, it really stands out because he kind of is a kind of an anti-singer at times, which I like.
For me, it's the backstory of Heroes and the lyrics, and what it represents. I mean, we're standing athwart this hideous system that wants to destroy the individual and turn us all into automaton and reduce us to widgets. And instead, he says, "No, we can be heroes," and that's what rock and roll is about. And it's a song that whenever I go back to it, it this might sound sentimental and corny, but it re-enchants the world for me. It brings me back to
Yeah.
that place of like, remembering that you're in a story and you can do heroic things in the story.
Yeah, no, it's an
Mhm.
inspiring song. Like, and it's weird. You can dissect the lyrics, and it's weird, or you could just listen to it tonally and still get the same
Mm.
thing, which is kind of strange. Like that song's about that whether you even know if you whether you speak English or not. Like you might not even know what he's saying, but you'll get the same feeling from it, and that's how you know they've achieved something pretty good.
Well, and for me too, as a student of history, like, and Abby, I saw you wanted to get in, but just one second. As a student of history, like that what Berlin signifies and what
Mm.
that wall signified, just like building this incredibly epic rock and roll tune about uh, trying to overcome that is it never gets tired to me. Abby, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say it's a very successful song because it's enjoyable on multiple levels. It's one of those ones that you can just have on, and it's like, it's just an enjoyable thing to listen to, like a very catchy song. It sticks around in your head for a while after you've listened. But then I was listening to the core episode with the story about the producer and his affair partner, like at the wall every day, and that being part of the story of the song. And so obviously
Mhm.
there's that depth to it that you could enjoy it on that level as well. And a lot of very successful art is created in that way that it'll connect with like a lot of people, whether they're getting it at its very depths or not.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You can listen to it at home with the headphones and have this transcendent personal experience, or it can come on the jukebox and you're like, oh, this is a bop.
Yeah.
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 There's probably a number of commercials or people
Sure.
using it as like their walk-in entrance music and stuff like this. And yeah, it can function in that way.
Donald
But
Trump used to come out to it like he did when he would walk in. No, when he would walk through Mar-a-Lago, he would play it like because he would have his iPad. He is the music curator of Mar-a-Lago. That's why it's funny. So he would like literally play
wow.
that song. It is pretty funny. So I was just but the that's another song too where I there's only a few groups you can really think about this where if you were to go to their top songs on Apple Music and also be one of the number one songs you recommend somebody as a diehard fan. Heroes is like the middle of that Venn diagram. Whereas like if you're
Yeah.
a fan of Led Zeppelin, I love Stairway to Heaven. I think it's great, but it's like if you find out that that's someone's favorite Led Zeppelin song, you're like, "Oh, I see."
Yeah.
It's just like you know what you're getting into. Pink Floyd, Money's my favorite Pink Floyd song. Oh, okay. Like you listen to classic rock radio, no big deal. But with Heroes, if somebody says it's their favorite David Bowie song, it's that's a valid answer. Like like at any level of fandom.
Mm.
On the entrance music thing, I used to work for a company in London here that made party political broadcasts for Labour around the Tony Blair Gordon Brown crossover time. And Changes was suggested as an entrance music slash broadcast music for Gordon Brown becoming Prime Minister.
Yeah, that's a big life
Make of
insurance.
that what you will.
That's a big. It's also a big life insurance commercial song, like where it's like
Yeah.
the kids are growing up, so then they go ch changes, like
Yeah, yeah.
that song for and whatever like that means. But I laugh at like Bowie watching like some Capital One like commercial.
Yeah. Like, oh, how much did I make in royalties today?
Yeah, yeah, that's so funny.
I think that here's an interesting story from very early in his life, 1967, and let me see here. Rinpoche, the Tibetan Buddhist. I'm reading from Lion's Roar, right? So it's Buddhist wisdom for our time. I promise this gets to be about Bowie, right? This fellow Rinpoche, he flees Tibet and would eventually move to North America. And he was visiting the Samye Ling Monastery in Scotland, just down the road from the boarding school, I'm sure.
Hmm.
His star and that of Buddhism was already rising on that side of the Atlantic, attracting a new generation of seekers. Some of them were stars themselves. One, so the story goes, was David Bowie, who had started coming around Samye Ling at the inspiration of his friend and collaborator Tony Visconti. And of course, we know Tony Visconti worked on Black Star.
Yep.
And this is what Bowie said about this. Just as a funny little anecdote. He said, I was within a month of having my head shaved, taking my vows, and becoming a monk. And so he never ended up doing it. And I guess thank goodness that David Bowie never became a Buddhist monk and got derailed for 5 years. I love that period, though, where like the Beatles are seeking and everybody's seeking and everybody's taking
Yeah.
LSD.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, you go from seeking to full on debauchery to borderline Nazi stuff and then 80s like Reagan shopping music. That is the trajectory of the best artist ever, in my opinion.
I love the A side of Let's Dance. The A side of
Oh
Let's
yeah.
Dance is fantastic.
Oh,
You
especially
know,
like Let's Dance because you have he writes China Girl many years prior for Iggy Pop, and then he makes it into like that song is like this clunky, silly Iggy Pop song about heroin. Like it's not about a Chinese girl at all, and it's about heroin, and then all of a sudden David Bowie makes it into like a very fun like oh my woman from the Orient. Oh, it's so great. You know, back in the 80s when that was huge, 80s and 90s like movies about like almost these like M Butterfly style like movies and
Mm.
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, I have another little anecdote we can hang our hat on here. After Bowie died, he received tributes from everybody.
Mm.
Um, he played Judas in The Last Temptation of
Yep.
Christ, 1988, for Martin Scorsese. And this is what Scorsese said after he died. It's a shock to think that David Bowie is gone. He was one of those extraordinary artists that came along so rarely. There's a song on his album Low called Speed of Life, and that's the speed at which he seemed to move. His music and his image and his focus were always changing, always in motion, and with every movement, every change, he left a deep imprint on the culture. That
Mm.
blows me away how prolific he was. Like,
And that was Scorsese that said that?
yeah, that was Scorsese who said
Oh.
that. So
I'm picturing him and Robbie Robertson in their like New York coked out apartment listening to Low. That's a great image. Wow.
Scorsese, he seemed to have like a lot of involvement with like British, like the big British musical artists because he did a lot of stuff with Rolling Stone as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Rolling
definitely.
Stones, yeah.
He's underrated
Um,
as a music
mm,
documentarian. I think that's some of his best work. His George Harrison documentary is phenomenal. The Last Waltz, of course, is a masterpiece.
I want to tease what we're going to talk about on the After Dark when we come back. So these Darkroom episodes, we usually go for about an hour, then we take a
Uh-huh.
break and we do another 30 minutes for the paywall. Patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod, at Substack.com/at Art of Dark Pod. And I want to talk about his turn in Twin Peaks on the After
mm.
Dark. But we'll wait to do that until the paywall. I can bring us to, well, go ahead, Glenn. What were you going to say?
I was just saying. I mean, I guess this would tease for later because his film career is super interesting. You know, I remember the first time I ever saw him in a movie. I didn't grow up watching Labyrinth because I did. That was just a few years older for me, and I didn't have older
Yeah.
brothers who would have like been watching it. I didn't see it till much later. But my first time seeing him was the Prestige. When he
Hmm.
plays
Oh
Tesla,
yeah.
when he plays Tesla in the Christopher Nolan movie, and I remember thinking like I know that that's David Bowie. He stands out as though he's David Bowie. However, he like fits too. It's not just like seeing a celebrity in a movie. I don't know. You guys are both in this medium more than I am. What's some like a superstar like that kind of still blending in while standing out? Like what's the science behind that?
I mean, that makes him an incredible actor because, like, there are so many things that I've just been reading and I didn't know that he was in actually, and I like looked at that and thought, oh God, if you cast him in that, wouldn't it just pull focus to him being David Bowie rather than, you know, getting this character across? Like it's always a danger to like put a star like that as a kind of stunt casting. But the fact that he is able to blend in and you stop thinking, oh, that's David Bowie is, yeah, it just speaks to how good an actor he is.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I found it to be incredible because when I did the Bowie episode for the Perfume Nationalist, we covered The Man Who Fell to Earth, which it was built on that. We decided that movie is a movie if you're sick and cannot get out of bed, that's the perfect movie because it is just like it has this weird sickness to it, but it is very interesting. But he is like he just is a perfect like person on film when you just look at it. It's like the camera should be on this guy all the time.
Well, he was a real serious actor. He had a Broadway turn, you know, in The Elephant Man.
David Chapman was stalking him.
Yeah.
Because of his, we almost lost Bowie and Lennon. If you kill Bowie and Lennon, I want to turn at you.
Yo, if you think the timeline is bad now, if he had gotten Bowie too, we would be 3 or 4 more rungs down in hell. I believe
I would
that.
build a time machine to go back in time and being on the firing squad for Mark Davis.
for Chapman.
Yeah.
Chapman.
You know what we could do
that
is
imagery of the 3 empty seats for Chapman, Yoko Ono, and John Lennon when he had to go out on stage and perform in that play is just I gasped when I heard that.
That's the Elephant Man. It was the Elephant.
The Elephant Man. Yeah, and yeah, they say that the performance was incredible, and you know what we could do with our time machine, Glenn, when we go back to kill Mark David Chapman, is we could force him to start a career in the theater, make him do the Elephant Man on Broadway, and right before the intermission, we get him as he's like dying on stage.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think that's fair. Yeah, fair and reasonable.
Fair and just.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll go back into the Crichton archives for the time machine.
Yeah. Right.
So I've got something that does tie into Twin Peaks, and it's the 9 Inch Nails tour. So I'm reading here from Bowie on Bowie, and this of all the tours in history, this is probably the one that I wish I could have seen. Maybe that's a little hyperbolic, but I was a 9 Inch Nails super fan when I was a kid. I had bootlegs. We drove to Madison, Wisconsin, all the way from Mandan, North Dakota, 11 hours in a minivan, packed 8 of us in to go see A Perfect Circle open for 9 Inch Nails on the Fragile tour. Oh yeah, dude. It was just. Yeah, it was so cool. And my
what was your outfit? What was Kevin?
Dude, black and pleather. Hot topic. Hot topic, dude. And and I had my hair dyed black number 1, baby. Hypo negative.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. Oh yeah. I was like, that's right. That's what we were up to. All the way out in North Dakota. And but I love 9 Inch Nails. And I got into it a little too late for this tour. And I will tell you, calling back to Labyrinth, my first exposure to Labyrinth unfortunately occurred during like junior high, and it was super awkward to sit in a room and like the center focus was his codpiece. That's what I remember. And so David Bowie was always this like freaky figure of, I always had one kind of foot away. I was like, this is too much for me. But it was the 9 Inch Nails connection that I'm sure ultimately opened my mind to Bowie. And then also Lynch, because Bowie has that great song on Lost Highway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm deranged. But this is what he said about touring with 9 Inch Nails, all right? And he's talking about his band. Yeah, they came in as the touring band in 1995 when we did the 9 Inch Nails tour. Then I reduced the band down because it was, I thought, just too large and unwieldy. It was a 9 piece, so I took it down to a 4 piece. They continued on with me through the rest of this last year. We're in pretty solid as a unit now. They'll be coming again with me when I go out this year. You referred to the outside tour as the Nine Inch Nails tour, David. Yes. Wasn't it the David Bowie tour? And this was like kind of a sticking point because Bowie's star had kind of fallen by the mid 90s. He wasn't the Bowie of 1973. And Nine Inch Nails was the biggest act on the planet. So they mixed their show together and had it because Trent Reznor did not want to or did not want David Bowie to open for him,
Right.
which I think is extraordinarily, classy. But in any case, here's what David said. Well, I kind of presumed you knew I was on it. Nine Inch Nails as opposed to the Pat Boone tour. Don't want you giving Nine Inch Nails too much credit here, David. Well, they're very good. That was a pretty spectacular duet you did with Trent Reznor, David. The one song that I did with him, Oh Lord, Come On, tell me the name of it. Hurt. That's it. Hurt. A beautiful ballad, one of the best songs he wrote. The tour was a really unusual combination of styles. We both felt that it was probably one of the most adventurous stylings of a tour in quite a few years. I'm not sure if many other people thought of doing that kind of combination. I haven't seen it happen too many times subsequently. We actually filmed it, and one day we'll do something with the footage. And in any event, I just love to be there.
Oh yeah.
To see it. Yeah.
I love Bowie. When Bowie to his last years, he would go out and do Comfortably Numb with Pink Floyd, or David Gilmour at least. And I saw, and speaking of which, I saw Nine Inch Nails 2 years ago in Berkeley at the Greek Theater, right by California Berkeley University. And by the way, Trent, you want to talk about Fountain of Youth and like adrenochrome? Trent looks better than he did in
jacked.
1994.
Yeah, well, he was going to kill himself in the 90s. I mean, he was going to die.
Yeah, and he was just like ugly too. Like, but now he's just like this like handsome like actor. He looks like he's in movies.
He got that he got that Hollywood money. He got that Hollywood money for sure.
He won a Golden Globe for Challengers. He's probably going to win an Oscar too. Like, it's just like
he's already won an Oscar. Yeah, he won an Oscar for
this year,
he's going to win another
one.
one. Yeah,
I think he's going to win for Challengers again. I mean, he should. But it's just like, yeah, I love that Bowie always recognized too, like, when you have when you want to find the next great thing and you're not just this like gatekeeping artist, like Miles Davis was like this too, where they would always try to find, like, I want to find the great people and help them be great rather than everyone just go binge my back catalog because everything sucks now. And when you do that, it reciprocated back most of the time, where you have a guy like Trent Reznor saying, no, you're not opening for me. I refuse to have that. Like, where Bowie was kind of like this, let me show you my magic. I'm David Bowie. I thank God you met me, Trent, because you would be nothing without. If he was like that, which he wasn't, because even a guy who's had as many arcs and peaks and valleys as Bowie has, there's not a lot of bridges burned, like most people were like, no, he was great. Like, he was kind of an insane guy, but he was great, and I just love that about him. He just seemed so well liked, and he just seemed modest when he kind of didn't have to be.
I have a little more about
Buddhist
this.
nature.
Yeah, he was deeply read, and he was a very spiritual person. I mean, I think goes without saying.
His book list is amazing. Like, when you look at the stuff he read, I'm like, oh my gosh! Like, he was reading like Camille Paglia, like when it came out, and he was like, he was
hell yeah,
voicemails on her like machine, like talking about like how
when Sexual Persona came out. I think I knew that. Yeah.
I think she had said in an interview, like, she was like, yeah, like all of a sudden you like hear this familiar voice. I mean, yeah, everyone knows what his voice sounds like, and you just like leaving a voicemail like about Sexual Persona, like really like engaging with the text, not just like, I bought your book and it's on my shelf and people are complimenting me for having it. Like, he's like really engaging with it.
Amazing. A little more here. I've got, this is from davidbowieworld.nl. Okay, all right. Here's what he said. Yeah, he said, I personally did like, this is Bowie speaking, I personally did like the combination of Nine Inch Nails and me, but my fans didn't. Bad luck. It also was an extremely young audience, between 12 and 17 years old. That's true. Like that Nine Inch Nails period. Yeah, it would have been the average age was probably a lot younger. My starting point was simply, I've just made an adventurous album. What can I do now to turn the concerts as adventurous? Looking at it in that way, it seemed a logic to confront myself with the Nine Inch Nails audience. That you're going in front of some pit bulls. I knew it would be hard to captivate them by music they'd never heard by an artist whose name was the only familiar thing. So let's see. Trent Reznor has gone on to record numerous times as being, he's gone on record saying that he was heavily influenced by David Bowie. And you can definitely hear that. Like Scary Monsters is the template for so much of that, like industrial stuff. And
isn't that funny when you think about that time period for Scary Monsters coming out? I love that because at the time, nobody knows what the 80s are going to sound like. And everybody's just throwing darts at what they think the sound's going to be. And you can hear rock, you can hear funk, you can hear a little bit of new wave on there, and a little bit of that post-punk stuff, which Bowie, in my opinion, invented post-punk while punk was happening. Like, that's how forward-thinking he is. Like, I think he kind of invented it. Like, or not invented it, but that would be the most mainstream.
He was hearing, there's a great quote, I can't remember, it's on the core episode, but he was hearing the future and putting it on vinyl.
Yeah, but it's such an interesting time in music. It might be my favorite, most interesting time in like rock music for me is when you have Black Sabbath's breaking up, you have Ozzy, you have Black Sabbath. They're trying to make the 80s sound like one thing. Bowie's doing his thing. You have, bands like The Clash getting into a little bit more of a pop new wave sound. Like all of these and then you have, completely other sides of the coin, in the 80s and nobody knew what that was going to sound like and everybody guessed and it was all good for the most part when you listen to it.
Just a little more about this tour and then we'll wind down, take a little break and come back. Let's see here. Bowie opened an interview for the tour with USA Today on the opening day of the tour, the 14th of September, 1995. Take me back with the question, how do you commit commercial suicide? Well, you do this. Play songs from an album that hasn't been released yet and complement it with obscure songs from the past that you've never done on stage. He knew what he was doing. During the tour, as Nine Inch Nails reached the conclusion of their performance, the two bands played together with both Nine Inch Nails and Bowie and his band performing Subterraneans, Hello Space Boy, and Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, right? Like going, this is the connection. Followed by two Nine Inch Nails songs, Reptile and Hurt, after which Bowie continued with his set alone. I love that format. Like,
that's great.
We're telling you what this is, right? Like, I love it. And one last paragraph here. Early in the tour, and this is David Bowie speaking, the almost 100% Nine Inch Nails audience provided a challenge. And he said, in those first weeks, we had to adjust emotionally to the fact that we were going to be challenged every night to get in sync with what people were coming to the show for. And this is coming off of still Nine Inch Nails' greatest record, The Downward Spiral, which is so dark and so heavy and so it's just such a terrifying. It's a terrifying record. Yeah, he recorded it at the house where the Manson murders happened.
Yeah, oh, gosh. That similar to Bowie recording his Berlin stuff in like an old Nazi kitchen, and then you have Trent Reznor doing the Manson stuff. By the way, that just real quick, Downward Spiral, like that's one of those few albums that you can listen to and like be sad in your room. You can listen and be mad somewhere. You can listen while you're driving and have like Michael Douglas falling down road rage, or you could like go play professional sports and hear like March of the Pigs or something, you know what I mean? Like it's such a versatile album. The heaviness on that album,
dude.
The guitar tone is like you don't really hear that matched. Yeah,
it was such a groundbreaking record. And one of my favorite things to do is to put on the Downward Spiral and go walk around modern art museums.
Yeah.
I get a lot out of that. It's like Glenn's like, man. Do I have to come back to the After Dark?
No. Are you kidding me? I canceled all the rest of my appointments.
Very good. Very good.
Getting rid of me.
Cool. Well, let's wind down the main part of this dark room. Abbie, okay. This is your first dark room, so congratulations on making it through. I love doing these, and Glenn is a pro, a very easy guest. And Abbie, I think you're going to bring on some of your people too, aren't you?
Or maybe, I am. Yeah, I've got at least one booked. I have a few more in mind.
Okay, all right, good. Abbie has we're going to bring people into the podcast party circuit. It really is cool. I love it. It's you get to. Glenn, did you start your show during the plague?
Literally a week before it happened, which I thought was
Oh, wow.
it was prophetic. We were both Sai's been my best friend since 8th grade, so it was kind of a bucket list thing for us. And then we both were out of work for a little bit, so we're like, let's just do it every day. And
Right.
then we just would do it every day and nobody's listening, just like porn bots on SoundCloud were like, just, yeah, this is great. You know, like those were the only people listening to this. And I like to think they were real fans that just had a day job.
They're everyone's first
Yeah,
fans.
they can't have taste, the guys that are running those accounts. Yeah. And, but anyways, we started it there and then we just kept going. We're like, I don't care who's listening. This is so fun, you know? And then after a while, it was like more people would listen. But yeah, it was a week before, and then all of a sudden that shut down, and we kind of felt like it was the right thing to do. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the very, very good timing. Art of Darkness is definitely a plague show. It was like
Yeah.
Brad and I reconnected. We're both stuck at home. He's in Michigan. I'm out here in Minnesota. Had just moved back from New York. It's like, what are we going to do? I guess we could podcast again. Well, let's come up with an idea. And anyway, the idea stuck, and here we are. But okay, Glenn, what do you have coming up on your show? And one last time, where can people find your stuff?
Like I said, best thing to do is you can follow us on X, though I have no idea how that platform works now. We just stay at the same follower count, so people don't listen when I say that. But that's Rare Candy Pod 1 on X. The Rare Candy Pod the handle is not available. These people are still holding on to it. But rarecandy.substack.com. Sai writes there. That's where all of our fiction episodes are as well. And that's kind of like our Patreon. That's where everybody should go check us out. Coming up is interesting. We have Yerk P, which he's I think you guys have talked with him before or something.
Yeah, Brad has.
Brad, yeah. We're covering Jacques Tati on there.
Oh, wow.
I love Playtime. Playtime's like a comfort movie
Yeah.
for me. Kind of like one of those like satisfying videos of like a lemon being zested perfectly. Like that's kind of like what those do for me. We're also doing a massive episode on Miles Davis, which is crazy. It's intimidating. I still don't feel prepared for that. And then otherwise, just tune in. We're very consistent. You get 2 episodes a week. So just be ready if you come over.
Absolutely. And I got to give a few of our plugs before we take our break.
Yeah.
First, Abby's making these great trailers
Those
for
are awesome. Is it you're making those, Abby?
Thank
Those
you.
are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that we have coming up in February is the first book club that we're going to host. So we do a book club behind the paywall. It's called Bookends, and we are going to be reading Jack BC's Tower. And this is, of course, Jack from the book club from Hell.
Nice.
Yeah, love those guys. I think of them as a companion pod to the type of stuff we're doing. They're just so much fun. Yeah, love them. So if you want to join us at book club, get your copy now. Jack's going to be there. And, all the details are at the website, artofdarkpod.com. The other thing we have coming up is that I'm going to be over in London in March for the London premiere of My Play Moderation at the Hope Theater, and details are at moderationplay.com. We are also doing a live show on Francisco Goya at Verdurin on March 24th. So if you want to come, if you live in London and you want to come hang out with Abby and me and see us do something like this live, go to the website artofdarkpod.com.
Can confirm that a few RC heads over in London said they are going.
I love it.
Oh,
I
nice.
can confirm. I had a couple friends said they were going to see the Couchman.
That really makes my day. I'll be on my best behavior, and of course, we're going to have a lot to say about Goya. But Glenn, obviously, this is an open door. You're going to come back for you're going to come back for the After Dark, and we are going to talk more about David Bowie. And Abby and I are both Twin Peaks super freaks, scary monsters and super creeps for Twin Peaks. So we're going to talk about the whole David Bowie arc in Twin Peaks up to the point where he turns into a tea kettle and all that fun stuff. So,
hell yeah.
All right, get behind the paywall if you want to listen to more. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Glenn.
Bye.
Bye.